What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Matt, and today I want to dive into something that's particularly catching my attention. So something I saw recently, which is the shift in priorities among younger Canadians. Okay, we're talking about Canadians that are under 30, which are now prioritizing home ownership over some of the more traditional life milestones that take place in your life. So things like weddings, big celebrations, or even buying cars. Okay, so recently a survey from RBC really highlights this trend. It turns out that more than 3/4 of unmarried first-time home buyers under 30 are now laser focused on saving up to buy their first home more than ever. That's a huge number when you think about it. So over 75% of young people are putting home ownership at the very top of their list. It's a significant shift from what we've seen traditionally, obviously, right? Where getting married or buying a car was seen as those big first steps into adulthood, right? Usually you get married and then you buy the house. Now it's the reverse because of the cost of housing. Now what's more interesting isn't just about buying a home someday. For 40% of these young people, owning a home is a crucial part of their 5-year plan. Okay, they're not just dreaming about it, they're actively planning and saving for it. Compare this to other goals like buying a car, which ranks at around 33%, traveling around 30%, and getting married 24%. And so as you can see, just how much importance they're placing on having a place to call their own. And this is super interesting to me because, traditionally, obviously, people used to get married. They would probably buy a car and then they'd buy a house, right? Or maybe buy the house first and then the car. Whereas it seems like because housing has accelerated in price so much that people feel like even when they, let's say, want to get married, they're pushing that off because of the cost of getting married, which is not cheap, and the wedding costs and all that. Weddings are very expensive nowadays too. But because of housing and the price of housing so elevated, people feel that they need to focus on that before they even get married or have their wedding, which is really like a change in, I feel like it's like it's under the radar, but it's really interesting how those things are changing nowadays, right? And obviously, like, it's happening because homeownership in Canada is not a walk in the park, right? It's incredibly tough to get in with prices that just seem to be keep climbing. Even though they've stagnated over the last couple of years, they're still very elevated, very high. Even though the Bank of Canada has started to ease up, right, on interest rates, making borrowing a little bit cheaper, actual home prices, the prices remain the massive hurdle for people, right? And that's why a lot of the young people are looking at the market and they're just feeling that home just seems further and further out of reach, and something that only the really wealthy Canadians can afford. In fact, a recent Ipsos poll found that 45% of Canadians feel like they'll never be able to afford a home, no matter how low interest rates go. That's a pretty just kind of soul-crushing thought, right? Yet despite all these challenges, there's a flicker of hope coming on the horizon. Some recent reports have shown that housing affordability has started to improve, even if it's just a little bit. The National Bank of Canada noted that in the second quarter of 2024, things got slightly better for prospective homeowners. The reason, borrowing costs fell a bit faster than home prices went up, okay, which is really funny to read. And it's not a massive improvement, but it's a step in the right direction. And this report also emphasized that we're not out of the woods. Okay, so high mortgage costs are still making it tough for a lot of people to make that leap into home ownership, right? And despite these hurdles, young Canadians aren't backing down. They're determined to make home ownership a reality, even if it means taking a longer, tougher road to get there. And a lot of them are saying, hey, if we have to push the wedding aside to buy a home, we're going to do that. We're going to keep that money, that 50 grand or that 30 grand or that 70 grand in savings that we were going to get married with or have a wedding with. We're going to use that as the down payment, and then we're going to work together as a couple to buy the house. According to RBC's survey, 72% of respondents under 30 admitted that they hear about the state of the housing market and it feels very discouraging. like homeownership is just unattainable. But here's the thing, 71% of these young folks still believe that owning a home is going to be an essential part of their future, especially when they think about retirement. For them, a home isn't just a place to live, it's a crucial building block for their long-term financial security and plans. Now, CEO of RBC's housing-focused subsidiary Household weighted in on these findings. She said that young Canadians see homeownership as a pivotal step that gives them flexibility to pursue other life goals down the line. The survey showed that a whopping 72% of savers under 30 are actually setting aside a chunk of their monthly income specifically to save for their first home. Compare that to only 47% of those over 30 doing the same. And it's clear that younger Canadians are really serious about making homeownership a reality, right? But for a lot of first-time home buyers, turning to their family for help is also what they're doing. So they're working together, they're saving, but they're also turning to parents or their family for help, especially for the down payment. Recent report from CIBC earlier this summer highlighted just how much of a role family support is playing in getting young people into the housing market. In the first half of 2024, 31% of first-time homebuyers received financial assistance from their families. And that's a big jump from 2015, where only 20% were getting that kind of help. And it's not just about people getting help. The average amount of financial assistance has skyrocketed too, reaching about $115,000. That's a 73% increase from the 2019 levels. This really shows you how much people need assistance to get in the market, even couples that are saving actively, how much assistance they need from family, from parents, from other people just to get in. Now, what does all of this tell us? These traditional things that have been the case, I would say, for the past 100 years or longer are being redefined by the younger generation. And homeownership is taking center stage. Like, homeownership is more important now to people than getting married, which is so like crazy, right? Whereas I think for a long time, obviously housing has been important, but I think because young Canadians have seen their older generations, their parents, grandparents, they've seen them do so well in the housing market with their equity and how much money they've made. Young Canadians are like, I also have to get in, I have to buy, right? So it's them seeing the model of their parents or grandparents in the market doing so well that they feel like, you know what, we'll get married later and maybe like in 10 years, but let's actually just focus on buying the house now and saving money for the house, and then we'll get married and travel later. Now, if you want to know my personal thoughts on this, I actually don't agree with it. Whereas for me personally, I actually lived with my wife before we got married. We rented, we didn't buy. And I think that's a really good thing to do. And especially when you're dating and stuff, when you move in with someone, and this is something I've seen, that when people actually buy houses together before they get married, and what happens is this is the first time they live with each other too. So they move in with each other, and they're not even married yet, and then a lot of problems happen. Okay, people don't know this, but when you move in with someone, you learn a lot more about them, right? It's all nice in the beginning when you start dating, but when you move in with someone, things really change. You start learning about how the other person ticks, you learn about their habits, all this stuff. It can actually cause people to just split up and cause problems, okay? So if you're just buying a house with someone without knowing who you're buying with, and you move in there, and a lot of times people get split up before they get married, or sometimes they get married and then they get divorced after buying a house, okay? So not only do they get divorced, but then they also have to sell the house and split the proceeds, and it's a mess. And I've seen it happen. I've heard stories. It's not a great scenario for people. And I think that it's really interesting that younger Canadians say that, look, screw getting married or whatever. Let's just focus on buying a house. And to a degree, I understand why this is happening. It makes sense. But I think that it could actually backfire on a lot of people, where they might buy a house, and then if they've never lived with this person, it could actually backfire where they split up. They have to sell the house. It could cause actually issues down the road. And I'm hoping that doesn't happen for people, but it tends to happen. It's something I've seen happen. So it's just a point that I'd like to make, where If you're doing this, let's say you're focused on buying a house before you're getting married with somebody, just make sure that you know what you're getting into, because buying a house is a lot more paperwork and it feels a lot more like intense than getting married, right? From someone who's also married and has a house, because a lot more paperwork, lawyers are involved. You have a financial institution involved. You have a big mortgage and a loan amount, which comes with a lot of paperwork too. But then you get married, and getting married is actually like quite fast and easy compared to buying a house and getting a mortgage. So feels a lot more like a commitment, right? And I hope for the most part, when people go and buy a house with someone before they get married, I hope things work out for them, right? But typically what happens is when you move in with somebody, you learn things change, okay? And I've seen it. So just know that. And I wish you guys the best if you're looking at buying a house before you get married. I hope it works out for you. It's just interesting to see these traditions change and priorities change for people because of the price of housing is just so high for people that they feel like, you know what, we'll get married later. Let's just buy the house now. And, when you think about it, probably the right thing to do, because if you buy the house first and you get married, you're building your equity, you're in the market, and then you get married in a few years when you save for that. And then hopefully you ride into the sunset and everything's great. And so if you guys like this video, kind of a different video, please hit the like button. Helps me push these kind of videos out to a new audience who might really benefit from the information. And of course, if you guys want to keep up to date on everything mortgages and real estate related in Canada, subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.